Hello and welcome to the Triple Podcast. We are joined by Brado. Welcome.
Thanks, guys.
This is very exciting.
Yeah.
And yes, is there a reason that you decided to come the episode after your wife was on?
No, it was just coincidence. Joel's been texting me for months and I've been going, yeah, man, and ghosting him and so sorry, Joel.
That's all right.
And then apparently you text Anna and I said, yeah, I'll do it the week after, because you text me as well and I got back to you and you go, oh, well, Anna's doing last week.
Yeah.
So it's always coincidental.
It's always a high wire act booking the guests, because you like ask like 5 people and then they all say they can. Yeah, they often say they can do it in the same day. And you're like, I've got to move people around, but it worked well. You didn't, so you're not coming on to correct any untruths.
No, she did well.
That's good. Excellent.
I was proud of her.
How are you feeling today? Thank you for coming on. You
Feeling
excited
good.
for this?
Yeah,
Are you feeling
exciting.
Uplifted?
I am feeling uplifted.
Yes. Go ahead. Yes. Plug
my business.
Plug away your business.
Uplift Building.
Yes.
Should be a positive experience, hopefully.
How many houses do you reckon you've built?
Oh, I've worked on a lot of houses over the years, yeah.
Do you reckon that you have a guess at how many you reckon you've built?
If you could pick a number.
I haven't built from scratch all these houses, but I reckon I've worked in over 1,000 houses.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And mainly in the Shire area? Mostly?
Well, before I was actually a builder, I was a cabinet maker, so I did a lot of work in the eastern suburbs.
Yeah, okay.
And so I put in all sorts of cupboards and cabinetry in Mosman and all those nice areas.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, I've worked in all over Sydney, but now I'm older and I've got 4 kids and a wife. I just want to work in the Shire and not travel.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work in the Shire. It's very convenient. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's good.
Shall we ask the first question?
We should ask the first question. Brado, how do you like your chips?
Yeah, I like my chips a little bit crispy, just with plain salt.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm great coming back,
Yes,
man.
plain
We are
salt,
coming
man.
back.
I think it might be a lot of effort, but it'd be good to see a tally now. Like
Yeah,
a
I'd love someone to
revised
go
tally.
back and do it. We maybe need to
Chuck it
start
in the
doing
comments.
that. Like a ding.
Yes,
It's kind of funny because our family, we're all quite healthy and we have plain salt. And so when we go to the shops, we've got to say, we'll have plain salt, please. And it often comes back with chicken salt on it. We have chicken salt and we're like, nah, send them back. And people look at us like, what? So we send it back and get plain salt. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Is there a particular place you get chips from? Where you like to get chips from?
So chips are a bit like my kryptonite. I'd eat them every day if I could, but I've realised that it's not good for me. So we get them from Spit Roast if we get them.
Oh, in Sutherland?
There's one in Gymea.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I used to like the K&M chips at.
Those are the days.
Yeah, so that was my favourite place, K&M in Gymea. I used to get them at least once a week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, for sure.
I was kind of just distracted there by Ethan pouring Coca-Cola into a teacup or
Yeah,
a mug.
Professional.
But why weren't you doing that on the table? Why were you doing it off the table?
Well, I started doing it off the table so I wouldn't. So I wouldn't distract, and then I was like, "Oh, it might look like I'm pouring something dodgy into my drink."
Yes, that's why I'm.
And so I did it like a bit raised so the camera could see it, and then but at that point it was just distracting again. So
Odd
I
move.
just
Bold move, but an odd move.
yeah. So I
Anyway, sorry,
apologize.
Brad.
I apologize
you're
for
good,
distracting.
You're good.
That was really distracting. Do you have any sauce or anything?
No sauce.
No sauce, just chips, plain salt.
Yeah, chips and plain salt. We used to go to Nine Fish regularly and just order the family-sized chips.
Yeah.
They're like, anything else? We're like, no, mate, we're good.
Just the chips.
Just the chips.
Just the chips.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Next question.
And that is, Brad, how did you become a Christian?
Yeah, okay. So I became a Christian when I was 11. So I was in year 6 at school. I was a bit of a ratty kid. I was always getting in trouble. I used to fight a lot. And I was going down a path where I was like, what am I doing? Like I was always in trouble and the teachers were lecturing me and telling me I'd never amount to anything and all that. But my older sister, Rochelle Hatton, she was a Christian. She used to go to Gymea Anglican Church. She seemed to have things together and looked pretty impressive. So I went to church with her and I went, oh, wow, these people are cool. They like love you, So not that my family life was bad, but I had a pretty good family. My family weren't Christian, but my older sister, Rochelle, was. And probably by the time I came around to thinking about it, my other sister, who's older than me, Nikki Wright, She was a Christian, and yeah, they had something that I wanted. So I went to church, went to Glenmore Anglican, became a Christian at the end of year 6 when I was 11. And then I started going to SEBS after that, Church of England Boys Society. And because I was tall, they just put me straight into the older group. And I used to be a bit cheeky, and I probably used to get bashed every week by the older guys. It was a bit that was a bit of the mentality in it back then. It was a bit of the older and younger. You know, you're the young boy, you stay down there. So I'm really glad church and groups are not like that anymore. Like it's sort of like we're all one, and we all matter. So that's pretty cool. But that didn't stop me going. I don't know why. I just copped a beating and used to go back and be cheeky again the next week. So I didn't really learn very quickly. But I had a lot of fun going to SEBS, so that was good. I actually went through the whole of high school at SEBS, and then I started leading SEBS when I was later on in life. Yeah. So I was involved with SEBS, and I led SEBS for about 16 years.
Yeah, wow.
Up until I got married. Yeah.
When you said that you decided to go to church, was there a particular thing you're like, I need to make a change, and what actually made you want to make the change?
So I was going to high school, and I had older sisters who were saying, you know, you can sort of start again when you get to high school. Like you haven't got that same reputation as what you had when you were younger. So I didn't have a reputation of being I guess I was a bit of a bully, and I used to get bullied.
This is a primary school.
Primary school, yeah. And so when I went to high school, I could be someone different. So I decided I wanted to become a Christian, go in with a different attitude, and that's what I did.
Looking back on it, do you think there's a sense that God was calling you to make the change? Because sometimes we talk to people on Jip Lunch and they're like, "Oh, I didn't realise like God had been calling to me for quite a while."
Yeah, I reckon definitely God called me.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I don't feel like I could do anything right when I was a kid, and you know, I didn't have a lot of opinion. My opinion wasn't really heard at home much, and we used to just do whatever my parents told us to do. And not that I had a bad childhood; it was good.
You feel like there was like more to express.
There's more to
express.
I feel like there was more to life than what we were doing. You know, we used to go away every weekend down to a caravan down at Lake Illawarra, Wingdang. So yeah, I used to go down there every weekend, and so didn't really have a connection with any peers at home because we were away all weekend.
Yeah,
and
fully.
I did play soccer, but then I stopped playing soccer because you know, my dad didn't like missing out on going away down the coast, and he'd grumble about it, and so I wanted to keep my dad happy, so I stopped playing soccer. And I was probably competitive as a kid. And when I became a Christian, I realised that probably wasn't very godly, my competitiveness. So I didn't play soccer anymore. Yeah, but I feel like my life sort of started when I became a Christian, and I started making connections with people at church. And you know, I had at SEBS, I had Christian men who were leaders that I looked up to, sort of like my Christian fathers, I guess. Al Robbo was Christian father. He used to take me away camping and bushwalking and caving and abseiling and doing all those fun things that you do with the kids. And you know, I guess my father missed out by not doing those things with me, but I did them all with SEBS, you know. As a father now, I look back and go, well, why didn't he come? You know, he should have come. Yeah. But he just didn't. Yeah.
Is that why you kept going to SEBS though? Because you were saying that you used to get a bit beat up, but you kept going back because there was the connection and also older Christian men. Yeah,
I think you know. So we used to go there and we'd do a Bible study and we'd pray and we'd look after each other, and you know, someone would do a talk, and then we'd play games or we'd do fun things like a chalk chase or whatever. You know, it was a good night, but I think, you know, I was a bit of a cheeky, smarty pants, and I used to give the older kids a bit of grief, and they'd put me back in line. That's the way it was.
Yeah.
So did you get a fresh start when you went to high school?
Yeah, I did. I did to a degree. I found some people to hang out with. I did get in a few brawls in high school.
What would set you off to fight?
Oh, look, I was quite an angry kid, to be quite honest. I've been, even as an adult, I was quite angry. That's my diet has actually really helped me to calm down and settle down. Like I just have fits of rage for no reason. I don't know why. I don't know. And
Really?
I've cleaned up my diet, and now I'm heaps calmer than I've ever been. Yeah.
I feel like that's a point to plain salt over chicken salt.
Yeah, definitely.
In itself, it just counts as another din.
Definitely.
So we just got we've got a double points
double
already.
point.
I mean, I ate pretty good as a kid, you know, but there's more and more stuff that comes into your life. Soft drinks and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I used to get triggered pretty quickly. I've got a turn in my eye, so I had funny eyes. So I used to get teased as a kid. So then I'd get teased, and so my dad told me, look, just punch the crap out of him. So that was what he told me. So I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I realised that wasn't the way to go, right? So
So you've been paid out, and you kind of like get these obviously emotions of feeling like crap because someone's paying you out. So then the way that you kind of felt or thought you needed to deal with it was to have a go.
well, that's what I was told. If you feel that emotion come on, you have a go. And look, even an adult, I still do that. It's really hard. I remember Anna said last week, you learn behaviour. Well, it's a learned behaviour. I still feel cornered and I get cranky.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What is that process? Like, I know you're saying you still do, but what was the process as you've gone through life? And I know it might this question might result into skipping over a few things, but we can come back to stuff.
Yeah.
What was the process of learning to not do that look like?
Yeah. Yep. So, I'm done. I remember when I was, I left school. I left school at 15, started working, and I couldn't be this angry kid anymore. I was trying to be a man. And so I remember going to a counsellor. Just down the road here, there was a counsellor. I was an apprentice. I started off as just a process worker when I was 15, making filing cabinet runner drawer for the wheels for the runners for the drawers, and then 6 months into that, I got an apprenticeship as a sheet metal worker, and so I had a little bit of money. I wasn't earning a lot, $163 a week, which is not a lot of money.
Apprentices get paid a lot more these days.
Yeah, that's all right. But I remember
As a 15-year-old though, you laugh at it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it was okay. I was living at home, it was all good. But I remember going to this counsellor, and it wasn't a set fee. It was, I gave them $20. They'd take a nominal amount. But I remember actually learning a lot about myself through doing counselling and realising that, because I'd been told God loves me, and I think I just needed to learn to love myself, and figure out how to be a man.
Yeah, fully.
So I did heaps of counselling. That was really helpful. And I had mentors. I started going to Soul Revival, and Stu Crawshaw, Louise Crawshaw took me under their wing. And real influence in my life. Life would get tough at home, and so I'd just pack a bag and start walking or whatever, and I'd go to Stu's house. Stu would say, "Yeah, mate, you know where the bed is?" Door was always open. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I think just like talking about this stuff like anger and how to deal with it, I think it's, and you've talked about two things that are really quite vulnerable already, Brad, is in terms of the anger that you feel and not knowing how to deal with it and working out how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And also going to counselling. And I think one of the reasons we do this podcast is to hear your story, but also that your story can help other people.
Oh, 100%.
And I think what you're saying is like can help heaps of men.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that this stuff that you're sharing now, have you helped other men along the way as well?
Oh, definitely. So I think, the old, if you've got a broken arm, you don't hesitate to go to the doctor or ring an ambulance because your arm's broken and you need to get it healed. We have this stigma with mental health or if we need counselling, you must be broken. Well, sometimes I'd go to counselling just because I wanted to learn how to be a better father or a better husband. When we first got married, I wanted to learn how to argue with my wife better without, again, getting that trigger and just being angry. Like, it wasn't about being angry. I was like, I wanted to learn how to argue better and have that emotion in check. So, over the years, I've done heaps of counselling with stuff like that. And I'm still working on it.
But I
Yeah.
think what you're saying is you're actually destigmatizing it for other people. So if
Yeah,
there are other
definitely.
men listening to this pod,
Yeah.
you're doing that right now. And I'm just saying I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Because I think, you had a broken arm, you go to the doctor.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
But because you can't see it, like
Mm.
if you're talking about mental health, you can't actually see it physically on your body, or sometimes you can't feel the pain until you're in that moment.
That's right.
So, but then it also fades away too.
It does.
your
And
anger
people
would fade.
ignore it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people ignore it, and they, you got to know where that feeling's coming from and deal with it, and
Hopefully.
actually give yourself permission to not be triggered. Yeah.
What would, in your mind, what do you think some of the triggers have been or were for you?
Oh, I don't like being trapped or out of
Like
control.
can't get out of a situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That may sound like I'm a bit of a control freak, but I'd just like to know that there's an out.
Yeah.
Like when I go forward driving, I take a spare tyre and a punch-up kit and a winch, right?
Yeah.
Like I can get out of problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
But if I don't have that winch or the punch repair kit, I can be stuck, and that'd be something that.
So it's kind of like if I don't know, if I'm hearing you right, I don't know how to get out of an emotional situation. That's when the anger's going to come in.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like that's my default.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's been a good digression to take. So thanks for being
Yeah.
honest.
No, my pleasure.
But you said, because I think you just said that you became an apprentice at 15. Does that mean you left school in year 10?
Yeah, I left school in year 10.
Okay.
90. I think it's 90. My wife thinks it's 91. It's one of those. Been working for a long time.
Yeah.
Um,
And as a cabinet maker to be, no, you said process
no.
worker?
So,
Yeah, just
so
like
I
a little
left school at 15. There was a bit of a recession. I remember sending out 60 letters to different builders asking for a carpentry apprenticeship, and I got no returns. So
Right.
that's not a good way to do it. And if you're out there and you want a carpentry apprenticeship, come and see me because I'll help you get one. Like
Even
this.
if it's not with you.
Yeah, even if it's not with me, that's right. I can tell you different processes to get it. So I didn't have anyone to really ask. And so I think that's part of being part of the church and the family. We can help people out,
Yeah, fully.
young people into whatever they want to get into. Yeah, it's all about who you know.
How much did your faith impact your decision to leave school, do you think?
Well, I just hated school. I was really bad at it.
Okay.
And I wasn't interested in it. I've been since diagnosed with ADHD. So it was a bit of a stigma back then. If you had ADHD, you were a troubled kid or something,
Yeah,
which
right.
I probably was. And my parents didn't medicate me because they didn't want to be parents of a troubled kid. So that's fair enough. It just wasn't done in the day,
Yeah.
And so, I got told, oh, you're an idiot and you never amount to anything. And, I used to just muck up all the time. Even in high school, I was in the low classes, didn't do real well. I used to jig other classes and go and hang out in the woodwork room. The woodwork teacher was my best mate.
Yeah.
And so if I wanted to do something, I had to be interested in it, and then I'd be right. So that's proven in life. I'm a builder now. I've got my own built business. I never thought I'd be able to do that. So I really thank God for that.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
What about, so if you become what is it called? Sorry, a process worker? Is that what
I
you
was a
said?
process worker. I just made I used to literally make the wheels, the sliding wheels. I'd put them together. I sat on a table with this other girl for 8 hours a day, putting wheels on and punching with a hammer. I did that for like 6 months.
Yeah.
And
So
move along
boring.
and someone else does the next bit.
So
would be.
boring. I remember Stu come and had lunch with me one day, and we sat on the lawn in Munro Avenue near Macca's, near
Yeah,
that.
right. But I mean,
yeah.
Near that Macca's there. And he's like, "What do you want to do, brother?" I'm like, "I want a wife. I want kids. I want to buy a house. I want to get out of this place where I am, do an apprenticeship."
Yeah.
And it's like God took a list and answered all those prayers. 'Cause,
Yeah, wow.
He's answered more, all those prayers and more. Even back when I was this little kid, this
it's cool.
15-year-old kid. So,
Where was the drive to have that, like you had that list? Where did the drive for that come from?
yeah, it's good. That's a good question. I mean, I wanted companionship, and I knew, my parents were married and they're still married. They had great companionship, I craved that, and I saw that even apparently when I was 4 years old, I was saving up my money. My mum said, "What are you saving your money for?" And I said, "A house for my wife." So all my life I sort of had that mentality I was going to get married and buy a house. So I wanted to fulfill those dreams, and I had that drive, prayed about it. There was a time I didn't get married till I was 26, so there was a time I was thinking, I'm never going to get married, But I did. I got married later on in life. I married a girl that's 7 years younger than me, so it probably would have been a bit creepy if I'd married her earlier,
Probably.
Yeah, 28 actually I was when I got married. So
It's interesting though that you say that, I got married later in life at 28.
Yeah.
In terms of society in the world now, that's not late. Yeah. Sometimes that's early.
I know, but I was a Christian man in a Christian environment.
Yep.
Mate, I was left on the shelf.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, okay.
There wasn't anything wrong with me. I just wasn't ready. And look, I wasn't mature enough. I still needed to learn how to love me before I could love other people. So, it was part of the journey.
It's super important to figure that out.
What age did you get married at 23 as well, Ethan?
23, yeah.
Yeah, I was 23 as well.
23? How old am I now?
I don't know.
I'm 24 now.
So you got...
I got married last January.
I'm
turning... Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was
23, yeah.
Yep. So I feel like I lived a whole life before Anna,
Yeah.
I did a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Cool.
Did you finally get out of making wheels for drawers?
Yeah, so they actually saw potential in me. They offered me an apprenticeship in sheet metal work. I did an apprenticeship in sheet metal work for 2.5 years.
Hectic.
And then I realised I didn't really want to do sheet metal work. I was welding, and I knew how to do all sorts of stuff that didn't really interest me.
Yep.
And Jim Watson was a cabinet maker in at St Peter's in a place called Individual Furniture. They were looking for an apprentice, and he said, "Do you want to do it?" I'm like, "Yep." So I was an indentured apprentice as well, which means you can't really leave very easily.
Oh, really?
So
Nothing to do with your
Is that
teeth.
because you got selected or something?
yeah, so they signed me up and selected me, but I still just said, "Look, I'm leaving," and they were a bit disappointed, but yeah, what you do, what you got to do.
Yeah.
From cabinet making you left?
No, from sheet metal work.
Got it. Sorry.
Anyhow, no, it's all right. So then I got a apprenticeship in cabinet making. I was in at St Peter's. I finished my apprenticeship. Jim Watson left that job about 12 months into my apprenticeship, so I worked with him for a year. That was fun. And then I finished my apprenticeship, and I worked there for another 2.5 years. So all up, I spent 6.5 years going into St Peter's and doing cabinet making. I was probably about 21 or 22, and I went, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't earn enough money to buy my house, right? I was excited to buy a house. So I talked to my dad, and he said, "Look, get into building. There's money in building." My dad was a builder. He used to build schools and hospitals, sort of big building. He was he was a building foreman. My uncle ran a building company, so he got me in the door, and they put me with my dad, which was good and bad. In the end, it was bad because I was living with my dad, I was working with my dad, and then we were renovating his house at Bundina on the beach on the weekend. So after about 4 months of that, I just wanted to kill him, and I was sick of it. So they actually moved me to be with another foreman in the same building company, and I stopped helping him build his house on the weekend, and I probably lived with Stu and Lou for a bit, to be quite honest.
Yeah, the cabinet making would have transferred skills for you to become
a
carpenter too, right?
Yeah, it did, yep. So I didn't really... I worked with that building company for 3 years, and then the Olympics was on.
Oh, yeah.
I went... Oh, no. In the Olympics, I went on a big holiday up the coast, and then as I was on that holiday, I decided I wanted to go to Canada for 12 months.
Really?
So I came back, and I worked till the February. Then I left that job as a builder. I went to Canada for 9 months because as I was leaving, Nikki, my sister, said, "Oh, I've met this guy at work, and I think you'll really like him." I didn't really get a chance to meet him, so by the time I met him, they were engaged and getting married, so I got a call. So I went over in the February, I got a call saying you had to come back for a wedding. So I came back in the November for the wedding. I had $100 left in my bank account, and I had to go to Kelly Country and buy a suit for $100 for their wedding.
That's
so
great.
I came back just bone dry.
Yeah, right.
It was pretty funny.
Tell us
That's
about
so
Canada though. Why did you choose to go to Canada, and what was
Yeah,
it like?
so as I said, a lot of my mates were married. I felt like I had saved up a bit of money, and I bought a unit in Oak Road, Kirrawee, and I literally settled on that unit in the January, and I went in the February. So I felt like I'd achieved my goal. I wanted to buy a property. I was 24, bought a property, and I wanted to go snowboarding. So I went snowboarding in Whistler. Worked in a pizza shop, and then I worked as a bouncer on a doorman.
Okay.
That was pretty funny.
That's so good.
Yeah, and then I bought a car, drove all the way across Canada, and my cousin was living in Toronto, near Toronto. So I lived there for a few months, and then we drove back through America. 9/11 was there when we were there.
Yeah, wow.
I was literally going to New York that weekend, and I'm like, oh, we better not go.
Really?
I was working in a place called Sarnia, which is right near Detroit, on the border of Detroit and Canada. So Sarnia's on the Canadian side. 9/11 was there. I was working in an oil refinery doing a shutdown, and so they sent us all home. They were worried that someone was going to ram a plane into this area, because that's where all the fuel from America and everything came from. So I was doing a shutdown there, made good money, and then I shipped. We drove all the way across America back to Seattle, and I came home.
Wow.
My mate
That's
that I
crazy.
went with, he stayed there for another few months, and it was always a bit of a stigma where a few people would go overseas and do this mission, do this trip, not a mission trip, sorry. They'd just do this, go overseas and do a mission or a trip, and then they'd not come back to church. A lot of people, there was sort of this mentality of, yeah, I'll be back, but I think I was the only one that actually did come back.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, there's you're on your own. You don't really know anyone. You can be whatever you want. So it was hard as a Christian man in Whistler. There was a lot of debauch sort of stuff going on, and drugs, and I didn't get involved in any of that and stayed away from that. I found a little church there. That was good.
Yeah, that's
That's
good.
good.
Yeah. It actually strengthened my faith, I think, and I was praying to God a lot. I came back ready to. I wanted to meet my wife, and I wanted to settle down and get married. I thought, okay, I've achieved my goal. I bought a house. I bought a unit. I've been selfish and went overseas for 12 months. I've come back. I want to do church again, ministry. I rang a mate, Cam Miller. Said, Cam, I'm back in town. He said, no worries. What are you doing for work? I said, nothing. I need work. He said, ring my accountant, get an ABN number, and come work for me as a carpenter. I'm like, done.
Awesome.
So I was in the country 4 days. I had a job. Cam picked me up. I bought a Hilux ute because, again, I was probably driving too fast back in the day. So I decided to buy an old Hilux ute. It was slow. Ended up being a bit slow for me, but it slowed me down. And yeah, I had work, and I lived back at home for a while. I met Anna, and I was in a mentality of I didn't just want to go out with a girl. I wanted to go out with a girl to get married.
Tell us about how you first came across Anna.
Yeah,
And-
so
and-
we're
and
at
how
a
that
foam
happened.
dance party at Solly's, right, in the old factory.
Did you say foam?
Foam dance party. Yeah, it was sick.
That's awesome.
In the old factory.
Foam
sorry.
dance party at the factory. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
nice.
so fun.
And look, I went up and talked to her in a mission or in between songs or whatever. She was outside, and she always had a boyfriend. I was always
Oh, we didn't get that out of her last week.
yeah, I was always attracted to Anna, but she had this boyfriend, and I respect the guy. Leave her alone. But yeah, she said, "Oh no, I'm on a break with my boyfriend." I'm like, "Oh, awesome."
How convenient.
Yeah.
Hello.
And apparently I don't want to upset the guy, but apparently he was on a break, and he told a few of the other boys around to leave her alone, but I didn't get the memo. So,
Yeah. I must have missed that one.
Must have missed that one.
It wasn't in the mail.
And that night, obviously we had this foam dance party. We were all just sticky. And she's like, "Oh, we're going back to the pool." And I just invited myself. I'm like, "Oh, cool. Where do you live?"
Like at a parent's place.
Yeah. I'm like, "Where do you live?" I'm there.
Yeah.
So I just went over to her place with Kelly Frost or Kelly Derwin, another girl. Sam Hudson was there, and we just washed off in the pool. She couldn't figure out why I wouldn't go home because I was just wanting to hang out with her.
When would this guy go?
That's amazing. That's super funny.
So
Rest
funny.
is history.
Yeah, it kind of is. Kind of is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, that brings up a really cool point and a little bit of a rewind of you were involved in Solies pretty early on.
Yeah.
What was that like? Tell us that story.
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I was going to a youth group called 200 PSI when I was in high school, and Stu and Lou led that as well. So
That was at Guymer Anglican?
Guymer Anglican, yep. I was like, yep, these guys are awesome. So I've been hanging out with Stu and Lou for years and years and years. Then they decided that they were going to do a Solies, you know. Yep. And yeah, there was a youth minister at the time. He had a rented house at Guymer, and there was this old dodgy garage out the back. So we fixed up this old dodgy garage, and we just hang out there with some couches that we got off the council cleanup and boxes of paint that we got, or buckets of paint that we got, and we painted the place, and it was cool.
Wasn't it brown? Did you say
Probably.
Right?
We probably
that's what
mixed all the paint together.
Yeah, that's what Stu said.
Yeah.
That's great.
I was in a band as well so that wasn't when it first started, but I was in a band called Lifeboat with a couple of other Christian guys at the Bardens. Yep. So I was the singer, and yeah, it's funny because I actually told Lucy the other day, she's my 13-year-old daughter, and she's like, "Really? I didn't even know that about you, Dad." So
Either did I.
yeah, I've never really talked about it. It's a thing that was in the past for me. But yeah, we were in a band. We sang heaps. We sing at Solies. The reason I bring it up is the first time we actually played was at the back of this Premier Street. We were back on the back veranda. We played to a whole group of guys and Lou and Monica. So there were two girls, and one of the guys comes like, "This is like the Blue Oyster Bar."
Oh, that's amazing.
From Police Academy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a fond memory.
It was a bit of a thing to do.
so
It feels like in the 80s, early 90s, was you were in a band.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I remember like you had John Monkton on here. He had a band. There's some other people have been in a band. So
yeah. Well, we went to Black Stump, and there was bands all the time playing. And then
that's
one time I went to a band competition, and we had rent a crowd Solies. There was like 500 at Solies. We won the band comp. Like we were crap, but we just smashed it out of the park. We had rent a crowd, mate.
That's awesome.
They're like,
so
okay, you guys win. Of course we do. We brought 500 people.
500 people. That's awesome.
that was pretty
we
cool.
better give it
That's
to them.
so good.
Yeah, it was so rigged.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, it was gold.
That's great.
Yeah, but it helped us evolve. Like there was a time where I was 18 and we'd finish Solies about 10 or 11, and then we'd get in the car and go down the RSL and have a few drinks. And Stu's like, "Okay, why are you guys doing that?" And we're like, "Well, we're not ready to go home. We want to hang out." And Stu's like, "Right, let's do late night. Let's hang out till all hours of the morning." And so that's where it started. So we're like, okay, we don't need to go out to the clubs and pubs or whatever. And and clearly the action is what we're doing. We're hanging out, talking about Jesus and having fun. So the night's just extended, and in that it got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
I had a question and it just completely left my mind. As you said, it got bigger and bigger. What I'm interested in is that, like, you obviously still had, you said you became Christian when you were 11.
Yeah.
You were doing SEBs and stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think that being part of the early stages of Soul Revival, how do you think that grew your faith?
Oh, it moulded me as a man that I am today, I reckon.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's, Stu and Lou were like, you got to be committed, Jesus is priority. We got to love one another. We got to accept one another.
Yeah.
I reckon Stu's got 1,000 stories of how I was a pain in the butt for him through the early days. I used to try everything. I had that mischievous sort of nature and the questioner. I'm a questioner. I'd just say no, and all sorts of stuff. So he's probably put up with me for years and years and years, and which is probably what makes us good mates now, right? Because he's seen me at my worst, seen me at my best, and we're just stuck by each other, right? But I think that's what helps us it's definitely helped me as a father to be able to tell my kids. I remember Ted got to the age where he was ready for Fuse, and I said, Ted, you coming to Fuse? And he goes, why, Dad? I don't really want to go. And I said, look, mate, just come for a few weeks. I said, I've got relationships with guys. I've met people that I've known all my life from just going to one night, and then I went the next night, and then, you know, I've been there for 30 years. It's got to start somewhere. Yeah. I said, mate, if you go, you'll love it. If you don't love it, well, you're going to keep going anyhow. But, you know. Yeah. And so he went, and he sort of got it, you know, and it's been really lovely seeing my kids evolve in that. I'm probably going to skip forward, but, you know, my 13-year-old daughter, Lucy, she came along through Fuse as well. Shani's in Fuse now. Yep. Banjo's hanging in the background, keen to go.
Yeah, he's getting there.
You know, we come up here on a Friday night as a family because Anna's the Fuse leader now. So, you know, Lucy cooks me dinner on Friday night now, and then we come up here as a family. Banjo awesome. Comes, and it's a priority, right? We want to do it as a family, and we want to make it, you know, number one thing to do on a Friday night. Yeah. And let's be committed.
Because what I kind of hear you saying is that because Stu and Lou and the other people that were kind of the beginning of Soul Revival were committed to you. Yeah. You learnt commitment, and you want more people to know, especially your family.
Yeah. So there was a lady, Kylie Hook. She was a Soulies leader as well. Kent Elliott, Mick Baldwin, you know, and they all sort of, you know, they put up with my crap, and they moulded me as a young man, and they loved me. I remember going over to dinner at Kylie Hook's house. You know, she's probably 5 years older than me, and I was living at home. I didn't need to go out for dinner, but I'd go to her house and have dinner with her family. Like, how many I don't know, 14, 15-year-old boys do that?
Yeah, that's cool.
You know? Yeah. But I was welcomed into her family, and she was lovely, beautiful Christian woman. Showed me God's love. Yeah.
Something I wanted to ask you about was you said that earlier on you were talking to Stu and you had a list of things that you wanted to get done.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, in your mind you were planning to get married a lot earlier than you actually did.
Yeah.
What's that taught you in terms of like, it's like, I think it's fine to have dreams and aspirations of what you want to actually do, but it's kind of in God's timing.
Oh, 100%.
Like what do you think that's taught you?
Yeah, well, I look back now, as I said, Anna's 7 years younger than me. She's 21 when she got married. So, and look, couldn't have met a better girl, someone that has really helped me in developing my life. You know, I probably wouldn't run a business without her. You know, she sits in the background, but mate, I couldn't have done anything without her. She's amazing. And I think God really heard my prayer. I was earnestly praying for a godly woman who would enhance my life, and I could enhance her life. Enhance probably is the wrong word, but, you know, encourage each other in our Christian faith. Yeah. I was really attracted to Anna's godliness and her innocence, just so beautiful, Christian woman all her life. I remember her saying to me, you know, in our early days, because I'd just been to Canada, and her parents, you know, I came back from Canada, I had long blonde hair, I was pretty crazy, and I was a pretty wild guy. I remember her saying to me, you know, are you still pure, you know? And I was like, yeah, I am, yeah. Because that was really important to her, and it was really important to me as well. So she said, yeah, well, if you're not, I don't want to marry you. Wow. And so I really thank God that I had the strength to stay pure and to honour my future wife before I'd even met her, you know, and to, you know, not that that's all be all and end all, but it was really important to Anna. Yeah. And I feel like God was getting me ready to meet Anna, and although there was times where I was like, come on, God, can you not hear my prayer? I want to meet someone. Yeah. It wasn't until his timing. So I really learnt timing. I learnt that I also needed to work on myself a little bit to become attractive as well.
Well, you talked about trying to work on yourself first.
Yeah.
Previously.
Because, you know, it's not about what I can get from a relationship, it's what I can give, you know. And if I'm going to be blessed with kids, I want to make sure that I can bring my kids up well.
Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah. So, yeah, I remember praying that I'd get more patience, and I think I did over the years. There was times where I'd often, after Solies late at night, I'd go down to a boat ramp and sit in my car and just pray for my future. And I really feel like God heard all those prayers and answered them.
But as you said, in his timing.
In his
rather than
timing.
yours.
Yeah, 100%.
Isn't it funny how we always like, yes, I know exactly what God wants me to do. And then you pray about it. But he's like, no, this is how it will actually happen.
Yeah. And look, my life's turned out way better than I could ever imagine.
Yeah.
I've got, I never thought I'd have 4 kids, but I've got 4 beautiful kids. I can't imagine life without them. You know, I never thought I'd run my own business or be a builder, but, you know, circumstance pushed me into that, and it helped me get my builder's license and helps me run my business.
I was going to ask you, that's what I wanted to ask you about. So how did you get from being an apprentice working for Cam Miller to actually running your own business and building houses, like working over 1,000 houses?
Yeah. Well, so I worked with Cam Miller for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, and then we parted ways. I ended up staying in the eastern suburbs. I learned heaps of tricks about how to become a carpenter. I never actually did my carpentry apprenticeship. I was actually running jobs for builders before I started my own company, and I was just doing that all under a contractor's license for cabinet making. I remember a builder saying, hang on, you're running all the jobs and training these carpenters and you haven't even got your carpenter's ticket. I'm like, yeah, I know, it's a bit funny, but yeah. I don't know. I had experience and I knew what I was doing. So
you'd also earned a lot of experience doing all the other, like the steel making,
the cabinet
making.
Yep.
And then I would suggest, and because I work for a building company, but it's not always just about knowing the carpentry tricks. It's like putting the guys in place to do.
Yeah.
The right
So I actually learned how to do commercial building. I learned all about concrete and steel fixing and formwork, and I learned how to run those guys with my father early on in that time. And then I went into residential building, top end residential building in the eastern suburbs. And it was funny because when I actually regressed back down and came to the Shire and just did normal houses, I was like, this is easy.
Right.
You know, I was doing top end stuff with, you know, how do we figure out this? And I'm thinking, how do we figure it out? But they're figuring it out for the first time, just like I'm figuring it out for the first time, because they're custom made houses, right? And now, you know, they're, you know, if it's straight or level or plumb, they're the fundamentals, right? So,
yep, we'll say yep.
Yeah, well they are.
Yeah, it sounds like they are.
Yeah.
I like my house to be level. That's
right.
That's the dream.
That's the dream.
Well, if it's not, if it's sloping, it's more the opposite is not a dream.
It's a nightmare.
Walking uphill to the bedroom.
So I ended up working on a house.
I like how you just ignored everything that Ethan was saying. Keep going.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It's not worth it.
Affirming that it is an essential thing.
It is, brother. It is. Let's make it level.
Yeah.
Give me a call.
Exactly.
Give me a call.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No, you're right. I worked on a house in the eastern suburbs. It was a waterfront next to Frank Lowy's house, Worsley Road, for Andrew Banks. Throwing all these names around now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna pick up that name. Who is Andrew Banks anyway?
Yeah, he's on Shark Tank. But he was quite a wealthy man, right? Yeah. Before that. Yeah. Anyhow, I was working on a building site. There was probably 40 tradesmen at one stage. We all had a set sort of job, and I left that. I left that job because I was really just carpentry subcontracting to them, that job. I left that job at Easter time and I went to Brewarrina to prepare for the River Convention a week before with my wife. So as I was leaving that job, you know, I'm not coming in tomorrow, boss. He's sort of like, the guy that was running the job was a bit cranky about that. So anyhow, I prayed about it and just left anyhow. And we went up to Bree, and Anna and I and a few of the local guys, we graded the road and we dug pit toilets and we set up cut tarps and our campsite by the river, you know. And then after the river convention, Anna and I went up to Cape York and did a bit of a trip with the Buckleys. So we went up to Cape York and came back down. I was probably gone for 5 weeks or something. Anyhow, after that 5-week trip, I just got in my truck and drove into Worsley Road and walked into the building site, and the boss saw me. He goes, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I'm back to work, mate." He goes, "Oh, no, we haven't got any work for you." And I was like, "Ooh, okay." So I was like, "Okay, that's cool. I'll pray about it." So I, you know, I was pretty confident I'd find work. So I remember just walking around or driving around the eastern suburbs and just dropping into every building site saying, "You're looking for carpenters." And God's good. I found a guy that was an Oyster Bay builder who was building in at Rose Bay. Beautiful house. Gave me a job. I worked for him for 4 years.
Yeah, wow.
So, you know, yeah.
That's very cool.
And then after that, I left him. He ran out of work. I worked for another guy. He was a gay builder from, you know, in the city, and I met a guy while I was working for him. I met a guy who, he would go out every night selling cocaine.
Oh wow!
And he'd get enough for his own habit, and you know, he'd tell me all about how to do it. So I felt permission to tell him about how Jesus had changed my life.
Sorry, you sound like you were leaning towards. So I just did some cocaine, but it's like completely.
Yeah, the next little while, I sold cocaine.
Well, I had to listen to his stuff, so he had to listen to mine.
Yeah, that's good. I like it.
And God prevailed, because after the time that I spent with this guy, he stopped doing that. He became a Christian.
Wow,
really?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
He got married. His wife became a Christian. Yeah, and he did really well for a while.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, really, I really like that story. He's a good guy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think, you know, you never know when God's going to use you.
Yeah,
so I feel like even moving around doing those different jobs, he put me in places that he needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, it's just really cool that what we keep doing on this podcast is, like, it's sort of, we talk a lot about Jesus changes everything. We say that all the time. And I think so much of it is just like, it is just so astonishing how lives are changed. And how it's like, whether it be like having, like, whether it be going to counseling and figuring out like what you need to do.
Yeah.
Or it be like, I'm not selling cocaine anymore. Like there's massive difference. But it's the same spirit, and it's the same spirit, same God.
And you know,
doing that to us.
I've never done drugs. I never felt like, you know, he offered me coke at the time. Yeah, have some. I'm like, nah, man, I'm good. Like, I don't need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like God's had me the whole time.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's been good.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I just heard the title of the podcast, Had Me the Whole Time. So
Had Me the Whole Time.
Thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome, brother.
And so, when did you open your own business?
Yeah, so 2011, I was working for a couple of builders, and I was running jobs for them. And then, you know, over the time, they'd get me to quote jobs, and then I'd go and meet the clients and sign contracts, and then I'd do the job, and then I'd get the check and put it in the bank for them. And I'm like, what am I doing this for? I can just do this myself. You know?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
And I went on a mission trip to Vanuatu, and we did that with work. We went over to Vanuatu, to one of the islands, and I built, the first time I went over there, we built a school for the disabled kids. That was really cool. Next time I went over there, I did because we stayed in like a camp while we were over there doing that first mission trip. When I went to do the second mission trip, they, you know, what are the needs here? So we broke up into groups. I was in a group that made a new kitchen for this camp. Awesome. So that I think St George Christian School used to go over to Vanuatu and they'd stay at this camp. The kitchen was very basic, so I sort of just designed it one Sunday. I sent it off to this kitchen guy who was a missionary guy who owned a kitchen company. Yep. He loaded it into a container, cut it all up, loaded it into a container. we got it to Vanuatu. We put it together and put this new kitchen in.
That's awesome.
It was all very tight schedule and heaps of fun. I went over there with guys from work and my two bosses. Well, I ended up having an argument with one of my bosses, and I came home and went, I can't work for this guy anymore. I just lost respect for him. So, so I came home and I Googled how to resign, because I was actually on the books. So I Googled resignation letter. And I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to resign. She's like, good, because I was coming home unhappy. So, so we literally wrote the letter together, Anna and I, sent it off. 5 minutes later, my phone's ringing. The bosses are both on the phone going, what are you doing? So I just left that job. I didn't actually have a carpenter's license or a builder's license. But I knew what I was doing. So, I did recognition of prior learning and got a carpenter's license through Master Builders. And then I had to do 9 assignments to get my builder's license, and recognition of prior learning. They sit down and ask if you know what you're doing. It's all about paperwork, really. It's not about building. And I got my builder's license. Anna helped me do a lot of that, so that was really helpful. And then I started my own business in 2011. Started with just me and another guy. Put on an apprentice. Now I've got 5 guys working for me, and we're going really well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Was the hardest time getting it going?
Yeah, you got no income. You're spending heaps of money. You're a bit green, so you're meeting people and going, why aren't people employing me? It's because I'm a bit unconfident, going, I guess I could do that. I realise you got to be confident so that people can put their trust in you.
Yeah, fully.
And I spent half my life trying to be a humble man, learning how to not talk yourself up, to starting your own business. You got to talk yourself up a bit, and it can come across a bit arrogant. So it's quite a hard balance.
Get the balance between those things. Yeah.
And look, when you get a little bit successful and things are starting to go well and you're making a bit of money, it's really hard not to be arrogant. So I struggle with that now.
Oh, really? Because you're kind of like a little bit like, I'm self-made.
Yeah.
Like, I've done this myself.
I've never had a time in my life where I go, I reckon I got this nailed.
Yeah, okay.
But again, it's that arrogance sneaking in. Don't want it to sneak in, because I'd be nothing without God.
Yeah.
So it's not me, it's God. Yeah, and I keep on having to remind myself that. It's hard not to just get carried away and work. You got to, spend your time with your family. That's why I don't work weekends. I spend time with my family, prioritise them. And
just before I ask you another question about your family, I just want to ask one more about the building industry.
Yeah.
And being a Christian in the building industry.
Oh, it's a big question, Joel.
Yeah, because it's seen as, I would say perhaps a rough industry.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of guys and this is only, I was speaking from experience, so a little bit of experience. Like, there's a lot of guys there that have been told you're crap for a lot of their lives, and then they go do a trade.
Yep.
And then you'll go you still won't make anything in your life, but go do a trade so you can get out of my hair.
Yep.
There's also there can be some aggro, like you've spoken about before. There's also like a lot of almost like a bullying culture for apprentices and stuff.
Yep.
How do you think you were impacted by that? And I feel like from the conversations we've had not on the podcast, that you're actually trying to change that, trying to look after your apprentices and things like
100%. Yeah. So I when I was working for a boss, even though I was running jobs, I could set essentially a little bit of culture on the job, but I was underneath their banner and the men who they were and how they wanted things done. Essentially, that was probably one of the pushing points. I'd run jobs. One of the bosses would come on site and say, I want you to move that bit of timber from there to there. And I'd say, why? And he'd like, just because I said so.
Yeah, right.
So there was that mentality, right? Yeah. And you think, well, you don't need to be like that. So I try and, I'm not perfect but I try and set a culture where I give my guys autonomy. They're actually really clever, the guys I got working for me. They've been in the game a long time. They don't need to be micromanaged. Maybe they just need a bit of pushing. I essentially just push my guys, give them the confidence that they need to keep moving forward, help them solve any problems and get them materials. So that's essentially what I do. I'm a bit of a gopher. I pick up rubbish, I drive to the tip, I go to the supplier and buy material, but I try and set culture with my guys. I want to encourage them. I give them, we go to the pub for lunch or something. I try not to belittle them. I'm sure I do sometimes. I try and, I try not to let subcontractors come in and set culture. I try and set the culture. I try and have good trades that I've got relationships. So for me, again, I put in my relationships that I've got with God and people around church. I put that into my business, and I say, okay, I've got relationships with the people that I've got. So, my electrician, my plumber, I've got relationships with them. I don't just pick the best price.
Yeah.
I advocate for them. I know they're going to do a good job. They're loyal to me. I pick up the phone, they answer it. They don't go, oh, it's Brad from Uplift. He never pays his
and that's
bills.
super important. Right?
I pay my bills before I get paid. I pay them. I look after my guys.
Yeah.
My guys put in their invoice at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock on Thursday. I pay them that afternoon. I look after them.
Yeah.
And I get them shirts, and I don't know. They want to work for me.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
how does being a Christian make you think that way? Do you think?
Well, I want to be treated like that. So I think it helped me to not be treated like that. I realise I want to be treated like that. I want to respect the people that I'm working with and working. I don't say I've got these guys. I say they're working for me, but really we're working together.
Yeah.
I'd be nothing without my guys. Yeah. So I think that's a different mentality. I feel like God's blessed me with the people that I've got, and I just work within my parameters of that.
It was funny on the shock absorber. We talked about like churches that are led in a way for longevity, and the book that we used on the shock absorber was a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yep.
And then there was another book by a Christian author who took Good to Great and tried to look at the similar principles but within churches.
Yeah.
And that was called Breakout Churches. And he was saying that what ended up happening was the same things that like worked well in a church of like humble leader but sticks to the strategy and was always like, and obviously very theologically strong. But a lot of the principles that those leaders were doing actually translated to a whole lot of things that he'd read in like and found in Good to Great.
Yep.
So that even if they weren't Christians in like secular businesses, they were actually being run almost as similar as the leaders that did well in a church.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they pick up the same values.
Definitely.
Have the same values as what Christian leaders were doing, that were doing a good job in what they were doing.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because people want to feel valued whether they're Christian or not.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily, people want to have autonomy. I mean, my guys really, they know when I'm having a bad day and they leave me alone. They say, oh, why don't you go out in your jet ski, Brado, and have some fun, because that makes me happy, right?
Yeah.
And so they
get you out of there.
Yeah, well, that's right. I go in cranky, they're like, they guide me and say, go and have some time, mate. You're stressed out.
Is that because I reckon you're doing that with them as well?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like a reciprocal thing?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. They go, oh, we didn't get a lot done today. And I'm like, oh, well, we'll get more done tomorrow, like it swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, of course.
And I think, I really value them. Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah, I think it is.
And I think the Bible teaches us to do that. Like,
it does.
Whether they're Christians or not, made in the image of God.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to articulate this properly, but I love when you can see, even within secular industries or anywhere, that a leader that's a Christian is actually doing things differently.
Yeah.
And because they believe that, so everyone does feel more valued.
Yeah, that's right.
Just the way that God values us.
Yeah.
And I think I find that really encouraging, because like leadership is something that's really interested me in, who's a good leader, who's not a good leader, and what you can do as a good leader.
Yeah.
And when you see people doing that, regardless of what area they're in, and they're Christians, like that just makes like, oh, that is just so cool.
Yeah,
like, I really love it. And I feel encouraged hearing you say that about the
thanks.
guys that you lead as well. So,
thanks. Yeah. I mean, it is hard in the building industry to be a meek, mild Christian man. So sometimes I fire up and I get cranky, and because people take advantage of weakness, and they say, oh, he's weak and he's a pushover, and they'll try and leave things out or do the wrong job, and I'll go, hey, we've got to do this. This is,
or get away with doing the bare minimum.
That's right. So I know I want this. I'm quite hard on my contractors as well, but we get there in the end, and look, to be quite honest, they want to work for me because I'm honest and I'm going to tell them the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. Do you have any advice for people that would be either starting to get into it or just in the middle of being a Christian as a builder or as a tradie?
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard in being a tradie in churches, right? Because I remember being younger and saying to Stu, "Oh, all these people just go to uni, and I'm the only tradie." And he's like, "Come on, man, we're going to uni and have a look, right?" I'm like, "Okay." So he took me into uni.
That's cool.
Right?
That's very true.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? It changed my life.
Yeah, that's cool.
He goes, "Come on, we're going to uni." So we go into uni, and he takes me into a lecture, and I sit there and I go, "This is boring," you know. And then we go and have lunch, and we're sitting around and chatting to people, and he goes, "This is uni, mate. Like, they're no better than you. They're just people, and they're just doing something different, you know."
Yeah, that's cool.
And so I was like, "Oh, okay." So as a tradie in church, I realised that I'm just like them. I just do something different for work.
Yeah.
So that changed my mentality. So it helped
really
me realise that, okay, I've got I'm the body of Christ. I've got different skills. I can do different things. So I want to use my advantage of, being able to do a bit of maintenance, or I'm a bit of a doer. I get things done, right? So I want to use that for the body of Christ. So I try and do things around here or whatever at church, and I try and use my skills that I can, organising and do things for God's glory. So I think if I was trying to help any young guy in Christianity and building or trade, don't realise that you're not as good as the academic or the people that go to uni or into the city with their suits on every day. You're the same person. God loves you just as much as the next person.
Yeah.
Just you've got different skills, and maybe you can use that on a mission field later on. Like I think I'd like to do some building mission later on in life a bit more. When Anna and I would love to take our kids to a third world country to help them realise how good they've got life here.
Yeah.
And my kids are pretty balanced, but I think it's hard in this society to see how everyone, you look at the guy next to you and you go, "Oh, he's got a big phone or whatever," and you want a big phone, but you go out to the third world country and they're lucky to have food on their table, So it's good to have people realise that. I think we're all children of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. A while ago, I asked you a question about building. We've talked about that, but throughout this whole podcast, Brad, you've been talking about family.
Yeah.
A lot. You keep bringing it up. So I'd really like to know, and how keen you were to have a family even before you even got married with Anna. I want to know why you think that's so important. Because I think I see it even in your actions of how much you care about your family, like the amount that you know about each individual child and stuff like that. When we chat, it's really, really cool, and an encouragement to me as a father as well.
Thank you.
So I'd love to know your thoughts on family. There's going to be 3 questions, I think. Your thoughts on family, what God's taught you, and why family is so important to you.
Yeah, so my thoughts on family is, I may not necessarily have had the best family life when I grew up. It was good, but it wasn't Christian upbringing. It was a good upbringing, but it wasn't Christian upbringing. So I felt like if I was going to bring kids into the world, I had to be serious about the only thing I had to do as a father is to really get them to love the Lord and go to heaven. That's my ultimate job, right? So for me to do my ultimate job, I need to model that. I need to encourage them to come to church. I need to tell them that church is the most important thing to come to, and I need to get them there.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just that simple. So I was excited to, if I'm going to bring kids into the world, they've got to get to heaven. So whatever I can do to get them to heaven. So I want to give them experiences in life so that I can, just like a good boss and a good leader, if I lead my building team well, then I don't actually need to be there. If I lead my family well, and my kids, then when they get to a certain age, I don't need to be there. Even though I'll be around, right?
Of course.
But I want them to be equipped the best they can, have as many knowledges and skills and experiences and and good ethics, good morals. I was always taught good morals all the way through my life. I feel like was the start of my Christian journey, even though, my parents, my mum would call herself a Christian, my dad doesn't. My mum doesn't go to church anymore, but she'd still call herself a Christian. But I think, I love my family. From the beginning, I wanted to make sure I got them to heaven. And growing up in Solies and in this church, I've always been taught to be committed, showing up and serving,
Yeah, it's really good.
And so even just this week, we had a council meeting talking about we need to get more people in the kitchen throwing tea towels around. So I went to my kids, Ted and Lucy, and I said to them, hey, I approached them both separately, and I said, hey, Ted, they're looking for more people to throw tea towels around at night. Could be a good opportunity for you to get some mates together. Maybe you could do it with Lucy, and you could serve the community. And he goes, yeah, I reckon I could do that. He goes, I do it on Friday night after youth, so
He does.
I reckon I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said to Luce, hey, Luce, what do you reckon about doing that? She goes, yeah, I reckon I could do that. And then she says to me, she's a bit cheeky, my Lucy, which I like.
Well, I wonder where she gets that from.
Yeah. She says, oh, what are you going to do, Dad? Are you going to do it? I said, look, if you want me to come and do it with you, I'd be happy to do it with you. But do you really want me to come and tell you what to do in the kitchen? I said, because I can do that at home. She's like, good point, Dad. Good point. I said, so look, if there's a hole and you need me to, I'll be there, right?
Yeah.
But, I think it could be fun with you and your mates. And I think it's how you sell things, right? And they want to do ministry.
Oh, yeah.
Saturday nights, they're a little bit bored after church for a while. And I'm like, well, get a tea towel. And Lucy straight away, yeah, I could get this person, that person.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I've built so many relationships when we were leading youth group at Guymer Anglican, just drying things up.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah. I remember once we were like whipping tea towels to try and turn the light switch off.
Yeah. So much fun.
Yeah. So,
So
I think that's a really cool, and it's really cool that your kids, but I think your kids are doing that because you're modeling that.
Yeah.
Which is I find really encouraging to do that. What do you think God's taught you though as being a father?
Yeah, God's taught me, when I first got married, I realised how selfish I was, and I needed to include Anna in my life and my decisions. And then when I got kids, I realised I was even more selfish. Now I've got 4 kids. I had to actually think about what I want to do now. Like, I want to do stuff for my kids and love my kids and encourage them. It's hard for me to actually go, oh, what does Brad want to do now?
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah. So, not that I'm perfect and I do have plenty of time to myself, no problem. But I wanted to learn how to be a good dad so that I can give them the best life they can. You know, so that includes me working hard so I can earn money to give them opportunity to be able to do things, and also, I make sure people say, "Oh, can you come and quote something on the weekend?" I say, "No, I've got 4 kids. If I come and quote on the weekend, I'll never see my kids." And people go, "Yeah, we get that," So I want to make sure they're a priority. So, that's why Friday night, I'm actually pretty tired by Friday night, but I want to come up here and make it a priority to hang out with my kids and be a part of the gathering. Like, I love it. I love hearing the youth talk. It makes me feel young again. Kind of get it, I've grown up my whole life listening to the youth talk. Yeah, and I want to encourage the younger leaders, Ethan and
I feel encouraged.
And Braden and the team. And
I think your kids would feel encouraged that you're turning up again.
Yeah, they do
every week as well.
Because I check in on them every now and again. I say, "Oh, it's a bit daggy that Dad's there." No, we're cool, Dad. They're lovely. And then we drive around, pick all Lucy's friends up and bring them to youth. It's great.
So good. I love that.
It is cool.
That's so fun.
I've got one final question about family with Ted, your eldest. If he ever gets, or Banjo, if you ever get in a corner, you just tell him to throw hands. Like your
Never.
dad did.
Never.
I didn't think you would.
Never. So Ted's very mate. Ted rebukes me regularly. He says, "Come on, Dad. Come on, Dad."
He's a legend.
That's not real godly, Dad.
I can hear him say that. That's hilarious.
That's humbling, I tell you.
Oh yeah.
I'm a bit of a swear bear even now at home, and so, the kids put up with that. My wife puts up with that. I try really hard, but mate, I'm just in the environment all the time. It's really hard. So I get rebuked off my kids. I'd never tell my kids to throw hands. I've been encouraged to, talk things through.
Mm-hmm.
I think, mate, it's such a different time of society now where it's looked down upon big time to throw hands nowadays.
Yeah, it is.
And it's like the last resort. I don't know. Yeah, I even on building sites, I get in conflict sometimes, and being a big bloke, I just sort of stand my ground and people back. So, I don't think that there's ever a need for that, really.
No, sorry. Just to be clear, I was only joking.
No, I know. But yeah, that's the way I was brought up.
Yeah. And I think, again, like going back to talking about men, I think a lot of men were brought up that way.
Well, I know my dad was, and my dad used to fight a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, like even in my family, my dad and his brother got involved in a lot of scrapes as well.
Yeah.
When they were younger.
Yep.
But yeah.
I think that's
my uncle
just,
especially.
I think people, when they came back from the war, they were conditioned that that's how you sort stuff out.
Yeah.
And you also kept all, like, they'd seen such difficult stuff during the war.
Yep.
Yeah, it's...
So knuckles was nothing, really.
Yeah.
I've had the privilege of working with a lot of young people, and there's been one particular kid who I would, like, his whole outlook on life was his dad saying to him, if someone messes with you, like, give back as much, if not worse.
Yeah.
And it was just impossible for myself and the other leaders to talk him, like, this kid wasn't a Christian, so there was no possibility to be like you couldn't bring God into it, because it was like, well, that doesn't work for them. And it was just this like, oh no, my dad says, like, I got to escalate, like I got to match.
Yeah.
And it's just this really, like, it was really interesting because he was so different to everyone else, and everyone was like, oh, that's not okay, which is a positive thing. All the other kids were like, what is up with this kid? But the other side of it is so interesting how much we get from our dads, and
you know what, like, I feel cornered, and I'd get cranky, and I still want to fire up, not punch people, but I still get cranky and fire up and verbally, yell and carry on, and I want to work on that as an older Christian man. I want to turn that trigger off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And I've spent a lot of time with Stu over the years, and he's quite wise, and he's sort of said to me, mate, you've got the power of God. What do you need to get cranky and yell and throw hands around? Like, God's bigger power on everything. He's by your side. Yeah. So I've learnt that from Stu, and it's been really, really helpful. Yeah.
There's this song that I find really funny, and the chorus goes, try Jesus, don't try me, because I throw hands. I find that hilarious.
Yeah. Can I ask, just before we ask the final question, in terms of church, that you were part of the original core team for Soul Revival Church.
I was, yeah.
Tell us about the decision to do that, and why you really wanted to plant a church, and your experience from your perspective of church planting.
Yeah. So I had, my good mate under a bit of strain, Stu, and I knew something was going on because I've known him for so long, and he couldn't tell me what was going on, but he said, look, something's going down. And then he rang me one day and he said, look, Matt and I are leaving. I want you to stay at Guymer Anglican. And I just laughed at him and said, you're joking. Why would I stay there?
Yeah.
I said, I'm doing whatever you're doing.
That's exactly what I said too.
And he's like, no, man. I'm like, shut up. I'm coming, whether you like it or not. Like, you're not getting rid of me now.
Just like moves to another country and you just move the whole family.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty much how it went down. I was annoyed that again how it all went down. I was encouraged to calm down many times, and I was excited about a new beginning. We went around with Lou and Stu and a few other people, and went to different churches, learned how to do welcoming well, and learned how to things that worked and things that didn't work, and what we actually wanted in a service, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And learn how to do kids ministry and ups and downs. For me, I loved it. I love new stuff. I love exploring. I love all that stuff. So
how do you deal with change?
I'm good
up for it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm just saying. I'm just bringing it back to me. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I was just like, let's go.
I get bored going to week away every year because we go to the same spot. Let's go somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, right. You still want to do week away, but you want to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
So I'm like, I've explored everywhere around there. I want to go somewhere else. I love doing other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so I was excited about doing a new church plant. It was unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was cool having you as part of the launch team, like because you had so much experience of being in Soul Revival before.
Yeah.
You're almost like one of the very first people to be at Soul Revival, right? So
yeah.
Not many people in that garage.
Yeah, that's right. But just to know the values and stuff while we were planning a church and figuring everything else out was really important.
Yeah.
Not just have it from Stu and Lou and Matt and Lauren, but also from many other people, including yourself. So.
Yeah, I mean, and Anna's gone through all that. She's done Berea, and she's like, that's, this is Soul Revival. We've got to do this, Yeah, which is awesome. Meeting my wife at Soli's and having that same mentality, it's been really helpful in our whole life's journey, really.
It was my daughter Everly was talking to me actually last night. She's out last night and the night before, and she was saying, "Yeah, what would happen if church goes away?" And I said, "Oh no, so will we ever leave Soul Revival Church?" I said, "No." I said, "No, we won't be ever leaving Soul Revival Church." And she was like, "Oh, well, if it fell apart, what would we do?" It's like, "Oh, but there are other churches," and she meant just all the other gatherings that we have.
Yeah.
So if Kirrawee didn't work out, we'd just go to Yarra.
Right, we'll go to the next one.
Yeah,
yeah.
That was lovely. Like she's only 7, and that's what she was.
Yeah, I love the way they're thinking.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and again, it's probably hopefully because it's been modelled. So,
mate, I can already see the next generation coming through. That's the goal, right? You want to empower your next generation so that if you disappear, then they're there.
Yep.
You guys are running the church. It's awesome.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
No, these boys are doing an awesome job on.
They
Sorry,
are.
I pointed over there, but Braden's over there.
Braden and Ethan, fantastic job. I love being under their leadership.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
For me, it's not about age. These guys are really mature in their faith, and I just love being under their leadership.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah.
And again, another thing of having older Christian bring up younger Christian blokes to say, "Hey, you can do this." I really respect that about you, bro.
Yeah, and look, I say on Friday night, sometimes I get at the front, I say, "Look, if you guys need anything, let me know. I'm just this old bloke around," but yeah, like I want to be the dad to people that need that dad as well.
Yeah, and you said you said something similar to that going to Seb's.
I did, yeah. Al Robbo, I still see him all the time, and he has this mutual respect for me. He's never treated me like I'm the kid and he's the adult. Yeah, we're all just equal.
Yeah, I love that Jesus is the leveler. Doesn't matter age.
Correct.
Like your knowledge of the Bible, like he's just the leveler.
Yeah, he is. Yep.
Ethan, you've asked all the 3 questions, or the 2 questions that we usually ask. Do you want to ask the third one, the third and final one?
Sure. Brado, what do you wish you know?
It's always
what
hard
do you
to
know
say.
now that you wish you knew when you were a younger Christian?
Correct.
Is that the question?
Yeah, you got it.
You're going to make it.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to make it.
You didn't think you were going to make it when you were younger?
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't have that assurance.
Right.
Yeah.
Make it in what way?
Make it in you're going to get those lists of things that you wanted to pray for. Going back to that list. So you're going to get your wife and your house. Even though, as an older Christian man that's made it, some of those things are really not that important. Some of those things are, like family's important to me. Doesn't really matter if I have a house. Doesn't really matter if I have any money or a business or a job. I've got more value on my health now, so which has stemmed from wanting to become more godly through diet and not get cranky and fire up. So, and that's just a byproduct is actually being healthy eating. But yeah, like I'm 47 now, and I feel like I could die happy. You know, I've got a beautiful family. They're doing ministry. Ted is out Friday, Saturday night till all hours. I don't even know when he's coming home. He's 15. I trust him. I don't question, oh, where have you been, mate? I know he's hanging out with his Christian mates at church Friday, Saturday night. They get him home.
Yep.
It's probably more of a burden for them, but you know, he's
definitely not.
He rebukes me. I'm seeing him become a really godly man.
Yeah,
my
really
daughter will be the same. They're just beautiful.
Yeah.
And
It's really been a goal of yours though too.
Yeah.
Which is like, praise God for that.
Yeah. So I just think, thank you, Lord. You really heard all those prayers, and I've made it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
It's been wonderful
Thanks.
having you on the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
No, I really appreciate it. And I think, you know, the one thing that I was picking up though is just how many times you said, like while we were going through your life, of how many times you prayed about something.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, so this happened, so I just prayed.
Yep.
And for me, I reckon that's something that I probably don't do as much as I would like to.
I don't know if I do it enough anymore.
Yeah, okay.
You know, so
interesting.
I feel rebuked again by myself, saying, I need to pray more.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But like even just the way that you speak about, I really valued your honesty today, which is really cool. And I think, and again, as we said, like for other guys listening to this podcast, I think it's been really encouraging. Also for any women listening to the podcast too. But I just, in your experience, it's been really cool to give us that perspective.
Yeah, I think connection comes from vulnerability. And if we can't be vulnerable with our Christian brothers and sisters, or whoever else is listening to the podcast, you know, I want to encourage people. And if there's people going through similar stuff to me, then I want to encourage them. Yeah.
And I just love the way that Jesus has encouraged you to work on the things that you think are really important, but also the things that you think can get in the way of that important stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know, you were talking about your anger but your honesty about that is obviously helping you deal with that,
Big
get
time.
better at it.
Yep.
Like you're talking about even working in the building industry, it was the same thing. Like you said, some of the things you got annoyed about, you're trying not to do that as a business in building as well.
Yep.
So I've been really encouraged. So thank you very much.
No, my pleasure.
Any other final words, Ethan?
I just want to echo all of that. Really, really encouraged. Really awesome that you.
It's been a pleasure to hang out with you guys, and you know, I've seen Ethan grow up his whole life.
Yeah, exactly. That's
I remember being born, and you know, I've known you for a long time, Joel. Yeah. So thanks for inviting me.
No worries.
It's awesome. It's been so good.
So that has been the Chip Lunch podcast. Once again, thank you for Brad. Thank you to Ethan as well, and thank you for everyone listening. Please subscribe if you haven't already, whether it's on YouTube or on your favourite podcast app. What is your favourite podcast app, Ethan?
The Apple one. The purple. It's purple.
Okay. I listen on Overcast if you're on it. If you're on Apple, that's a bit of an indie app developer.
Look at you.
Yeah, look at me. Check that out if you want. But thanks very much for listening. Thank you again, Brad. And we finish with one way.
One way.
One way.